The golden sun rose gently over the city of Lagos, painting the sky with shades of peach and gold. It was the perfect morning for a perfect wedding, the kind people would talk about for weeks, filling gossip blogs and society magazines with glossy photos. The famous Crystal Gardens Hotel, a monument of luxury nestled in the heart of Victoria Island, buzzed with an electric excitement. Luxury cars, from gleaming G-Wagons to sleek Rolls-Royces, lined the long driveway. Guests, draped in expensive lace and velvet, arrived with an air of pride, their laughter mixing with the high-life music that floated through the humid morning air. This was not just a wedding, it was a statement of class, a show of wealth and influence that only the city's elite could command. Inside the grand bridal suite, the bride, Adanma, sat like a queen before an enormous gold-framed mirror. The room was a whirlwind of controlled chaos, a beautiful storm of activity. The scent of Chanel No. 5 perfume mixed with the soft hum of blow-dryers and the cheerful chatter of her bridesmaids. Her gown, a masterpiece of pure white lace embroidered with threads of real gold, shimmered like sunlight on water, spreading around her chair in a magnificent pool. A gentle, calm smile played on her lips, but her eyes, deep and thoughtful, told a story of overwhelming emotions. This day was the culmination of all her dreams, the beginning of a future she had longed for, yet a tiny, unshakable feeling of nervousness fluttered in her stomach like a trapped butterfly. Around her, her bridesmaids glowed in their matching gold Aso Ebi. The custom-made dresses were designed to perfection, with tight corsets that sculpted their figures and rich fabric that shone like honey under the soft lights of the suite. Each of them was beautiful in her own way, a stunning vision of grace and style. But beauty, as it often does, can hide the darkest of truths. The four women surrounding Adanma were not just friends. They were keepers of secrets, vessels of envy, and architects of a betrayal that was yet to unfold. They were the Aso Ebi Queens, and their smiles were as carefully crafted as their outfits. Kemi, the chief bridesmaid, stood proudly beside the bride, adjusting a stray curl in Adanma's hair. Her geli was tied into a magnificent towering structure, a crown befitting her title, and she carried herself with the poise of a queen. She had been Adanma's closest and most trusted friend for over 10 years, their bond seemingly unbreakable. Yet, her heart was a battlefield of conflicting emotions. There was a man-shaped wound deep inside her, a wound that had never truly healed. That man was Uche, the groom. She had loved him long before Adanma ever came into the picture, and she believed they were destined to be together. Time was supposed to have healed her pain, but standing there, watching Adanma prepare to marry him, made every old scar burn with a fresh and fiery agony. The other bridesmaids sparkled around the bride like stars around a queen. Nneka, the second bridesmaid, was the undisputed peacekeeper of the group. Gentle, kind, and very loyal, she had known Adanma since their university days and had always been her rock, the calm voice of reason in every storm. She watched her friend with genuine joy, praying everything would go perfectly. But even in her happiness, she noticed the tension in the room, the kind of silence that hides secrets. She had heard rumors before, but chose to believe in the goodness of their friendship, a faith that would soon be tested. Then there was Taif, the third bridesmaid, so different from Nneka, a burst of energy and social media obsession. Her infectious laughter filled the room as she expertly captured every moment for her thousands of followers. "Girls, let's trend today. This wedding must scatter Instagram," she shouted, striking a pose for a selfie with the bride in the background. She was the life of the party, a vibrant personality who loved the spotlight. Behind her cheerful laughter, however, a quiet envy brewed. Taif loved the attention and prestige that came with being close to the wealthy and influential Adanma, but she secretly wished she was the one stepping into a life of such fame and fortune. Then there was Chidinma, calm, reserved, and possessing a quiet, almost mysterious beauty. While the others bustled around, she sat by the window, her golden dress a stark contrast to her somber mood. She pretended to fix a loose earring, using the moment to shield her face from the others, but her heart was restless, her mind a storm of regret and fear. Long before Uche had ever laid eyes on Adanma, he had been with Chidinma. Their affair was a whirlwind, short, passionate, and ending abruptly without any closure. When she learned that her ex-lover was marrying her friend, she had almost refused to be a part of the bridal train. But her pride, a stubborn and powerful force, wouldn't let her back down and admit the real reason. Now, watching Adanma glow in her wedding gown made guilt twist like a sharp knife in her stomach. She kept her head down, praying that the truth would remain buried forever. As the morning wore on, the suite remained a bubble of music and laughter, a perfect picture of bridal bliss. The makeup artist applied the final touches, and the photographer directed the girls into smiling poses. It was in the middle of this happy chaos that Adanma's phone, lying on the dressing table, buzzed with a new message. She picked it up absent-mindedly, expecting a good luck text from a relative or a final confirmation from the wedding planner. Instead, the words she saw on the screen made her heart freeze in her chest. The message was from an unknown number, cold and direct. "Do you really know the man you're marrying? Ask him about Chidinma." Her hand began to tremble, and she had to read it again, and then a third time for the words to sink in. Slowly, she lifted her eyes to the mirror and met Chidinma's reflection. Their gazes locked for one long, silent, and heavy moment. In that single stretched-out second, the world seemed to fall silent. The laughter of the other bridesmaids, the click of the photographer's camera, and the music playing softly in the background all faded into a distant hum. All Adanma could see were Chidinma's wide, panicked eyes in the mirror, reflecting a storm of fear and guilt. Chidinma quickly looked away, her fingers nervously twisting her dress. Her calm was gone, shattered in an instant. She didn't have to say a word. Her face said everything. Adanma's heart pounded against her ribs. Confusion and fear rushed in. Who would send something like this? And why today of all days? The most important day of her life. "Babe, you okay?" Kemi's voice broke through the heavy silence, calm and sweet like nothing had happened. She gently placed a hand on Adanma's shoulder, her face full of concern. Adanma flinched at her touch but quickly forced a smile. "I'm fine," she replied, trying to sound calm, even though her heart was pounding. She turned the phone face down on the table, as if hiding the message would erase it. But inside, her mind was spinning. Who sent that message? Was it a bad joke? Or a real warning? And what could Chidinma, her quiet and reserved friend, possibly have to do with Uche? Kemi watched her with sharp, calculating eyes, noticing the subtle tremor in Adanma's hand and the way she avoided looking at Chidinma again. A tiny, hidden smile flashed on Kemi's lips before she quickly masked it with concern. She had seen the text over Adanma's shoulder and had been waiting for this moment. The seed of chaos she had planted was beginning to grow. She knew all about Uche and Chidinma's past fling. Uche had confessed it to her late one night, long ago in a moment of weakness. She had stored that secret away, waiting for the perfect time to use it as a weapon. This was only the beginning of her plan. Soon it was time to leave for the ceremony. The bridesmaids gathered around Adanma, helping her with the long train of her gown and arranging her veil. They fussed over her like mother hens, their golden dresses sparkling under the lights, creating a breathtaking picture of unity and friendship. But for Adanma, the moment was tainted. Every smile felt like a lie, every touch a potential deception. As they helped her into the gleaming white limousine, she felt alone, like the only real person in a room full of actors, as if she were surrounded by beautiful strangers. The woman she thought she knew, the friend she thought she had, suddenly seemed like characters in a play, and she was the only one who didn't know the script. The joyful ride to the church was, for her, a silent journey into a future that was now shrouded in doubt. The limousine pulled up to the cathedral entrance, and a wave of cheers, music, and flashing cameras greeted them. The courtyard had been transformed into a paradise of white flowers, with red carpets lining the aisles and golden chairs arranged in perfect rows for the hundreds of guests. The MC's voice rang out, full of excitement. "Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for our beautiful bride and her stunning Aso Ebi Queens." The crowd cheered as the bridesmaids stepped out one by one, their gold dresses catching the sunlight like polished jewels. They walked with grace and elegance, their smiles dazzling the onlookers, a perfect prelude to the main event. Adanma took a deep breath as her father took her arm. The heavy cathedral doors swung open, revealing a hall that glowed with luxury. Chandeliers sparkled from the ceiling like stars. The tables were draped in fine silk, and every guest was dressed in their most glamorous attire, looking like royalty who had gathered for a grand celebration. At the far end of the long aisle, Uche, the groom, stood proudly at the altar. He was impossibly handsome in his white agbada, embroidered with gold thread that matched her gown. His smile was bright and confident, and his eyes shone with love as he watched her walk towards him. For a moment, Adanma's doubts melted away under the warmth of his gaze. This was the man she loved, the man she had chosen to spend her life with. She told herself the message was a cruel prank from a jealous enemy. But then, just as she neared the altar, she saw his eyes briefly flash to the side, meeting Chidinma's gaze for just a second. It was a fleeting, almost unnoticeable exchange, but in that moment she saw something pass between them. A shared secret, a flash of a shared past. It was a look that confirmed her worst fears, and the cold dread returned, gripping her heart with an icy hand. Standing next to her, Kemi noticed the exchange instantly. Her sharp eyes missed nothing. Hiding a small, satisfied smile behind her elegant fan, she whispered, "Perfect." Both Uche and Chidinma were guilty, and his failure to hide it would only make the coming drama more explosive. Kemi had planned this moment carefully, sending the anonymous message from a burner phone just before the ceremony to shake Adanma. She didn't just want her heart broken, she wanted her crushed and humiliated. Her revenge needed an audience, and this grand wedding was the perfect stage. The ceremony began with all the elegance and grandeur that money could buy. The priest's voice was warm and soothing as he spoke of love, commitment, and the sanctity of marriage. A world-renowned choir sang heavenly hymns, their voices soaring to the heavens and filling the cathedral with a sense of awe and reverence. The guests watched in admiration, captivated by the fairy tale wedding unfolding before them. From the outside it was a picture of absolute perfection. But for Adanma, standing at the altar, it felt like a beautiful, elaborate lie. The magnificent hall felt like a trap, and the smiling faces of the guests felt like an audience to a tragedy they did not yet understand. Adanma looked radiant as she faced Uche to say her vows. Her voice was calm and steady, even though her heart was in turmoil. She spoke the words she had practiced for months, promising to love, honor, and cherish him. But inside her mind, the anonymous message echoed like a curse. "Ask him about Chidinma." With every promise she made, a question screamed back at her. "How can I promise forever to a man I'm not sure I even know?" She searched his eyes for a sign of honesty, a flicker of truth, but all she found was the same confident, loving smile he always wore. It was a smile that now seemed like a mask. When it was Uche's turn, he took her hand in his. His palm was warm and steady against her trembling one. He repeated his vows with a passion that seemed genuine, his voice ringing with sincerity as he promised her his heart and his faithfulness for all of eternity. He looked so convincing, so deeply in love, that for a fleeting moment, she allowed herself to believe again. She squeezed his hand, trying to draw strength from his touch, and told herself to trust him, to trust love, to believe that their future was stronger than any secret from the past. But the doubt lingered, a dark shadow lurking just beneath the surface of her forced smile. As the priest pronounced them husband and wife, the cathedral erupted in thunderous applause. Uche leaned in to kiss her, a tender and passionate kiss that was met with cheers from the crowd. Adanma closed her eyes and kissed him back, but the kiss felt different. It was no longer just a symbol of their love. It was a seal on a contract whose terms she no longer understood. As they turned to face their friends and family, walking back down the aisle as a married couple, she felt a profound sense of emptiness. The joyous music, the smiling faces, the shower of flower petals, it all felt distant and unreal. She was a bride, a wife, and the star of this beautiful celebration, but she had never felt more alone in her life. The reception was a grand, glittering event, held in the hotel's largest ballroom. The celebration was even more extravagant than the wedding ceremony, designed to leave a lasting impression on everyone who attended. The hall looked like something out of a dream, decorated in gold and white. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, giving the room a magical glow. The tables were covered with tall flower arrangements, fancy dishes, and bottles of the most expensive champagne. The air was thick with the scent of flowers and perfume. The bride and groom made their grand entrance, dancing into the hall surrounded by their lively Aso Ebi girls and groomsmen, as money rained down on them like confetti. Cameras flashed from every corner, capturing the couple's every move. Taif, always the social media queen, had her phone out, live streaming the whole event for her thousands of followers. "This is the wedding of the year, guys. You're seeing it live," she shouted with excitement. The room was filled with music, laughter, and celebration. People were eating, dancing, and enjoying themselves, completely unaware of the secrets and tension hiding beneath all the sparkle. Hi there. If you've been following our stories, thank you so much for always coming back. Your support truly means the world to us. And if you're new here, a very warm welcome. We're so glad to have you. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you'll be the first to know whenever we post a new story. Now let's dive back into the story. Adanma played her part to perfection. She smiled for the cameras, laughed at the MC's jokes, and danced with her husband. But her heart was heavy. Her mind kept going back to the message she had seen. Every time Uche leaned in to whisper something loving in her ear, she wondered if he had said the same things to Chidinma. When she saw Chidinma across the room, laughing with a guest, she felt a fresh wave of betrayal wash over her. How could her friend stand there, dressed in gold, celebrating a marriage built on a lie she had helped create? It took all of Adanma's strength to maintain her composure, to keep the mask of the happy bride from slipping. Kemi, on the other hand, was quietly pleased with how things were going. Her plan was working perfectly. She had waited for years for this moment, for her chance to get the revenge she felt she deserved. She moved through the crowd with an air of grace, smiling as people praised her beauty and her role as chief bridesmaid. But in her mind, she was focused on the next step. The text message had only been the beginning. She had something much bigger planned, something that would shock everyone. She wanted to do more than just plant a seed of doubt. She wanted to burn the entire forest down, right in front of everyone. As the night drew closer, she knew her moment was coming. The world was about to see the truth, and she was ready to light the match and let the truth explode. The celebration reached its climax with the couple's first dance. The lights in the grand ballroom dimmed, and a single spotlight focused on the center of the dance floor. The DJ announced the couple, and a soft, romantic melody began to play. Uche led Adanma to the floor, his arm securely around her waist. He pulled her close and whispered, "I love you, my wife," his voice filled with emotion. Adanma rested her head on his shoulder, closing her eyes and trying to lose herself in the moment, to pretend, just for these few minutes, that everything was perfect. The guests watched, their phones raised to capture the romantic scene, a collective sigh of admiration sweeping through the hall. But just as the couple began to sway to the music, the lights suddenly flashed and went off. The hall was thrown into complete darkness. The music stopped with a loud screech. Confused laughter and murmurs filled the room. People wondered if it was a power outage. Then, after a few seconds of unsettling silence, the large LED screen on the stage lit up. The glow cast a strange light over the silent room. A video began to play. At first, it was just the sound of a man's voice, deep and familiar, followed by a woman's soft laughter. The image that slowly came into focus was that of a hotel room. Gasps and shocked whispers echoed through the hall. Uche appeared on the screen, not in his wedding clothes, but in a casual shirt, looking relaxed and happy. He was laughing, holding a woman in his arms, her back to the camera. "You're driving me crazy," he said to her, his voice clear and intimate. The hall went quiet, everyone waiting with their breath held. Then the woman turned to the camera, grinning. It was Chidinma. The video was not old or grainy. It was sharp and recent, clearly filmed on a phone. On the screen, Chidinma leaned in and kissed Uche passionately, a kiss he eagerly returned. The hall erupted in chaos. Adanma stood frozen on the dance floor. Her whole body went numb. The bouquet of white roses in her hand dropped to the floor with a soft thud. For a few agonizing seconds, the entire world seemed to stand still as her mind struggled to process what she was seeing. The whispers from the guests grew into a loud, buzzing noise of shock and outrage. "Is that not the bridesmaid?" someone shouted. "Jesu! What a disgrace!" another exclaimed. Phones, which had been raised to record a beautiful dance, were now recording a scandalous drama. Camera flashes lit up the room. What was meant to be a fairy tale wedding had just turned into a nightmare. Uche, looking panicked, rushed to the DJ booth shouting, "Turn it off! Stop it now!" But the crowd's noise drowned out his cries. The DJ, clearly shocked, struggled with the controls. The screen finally went black, but it was too late. Everyone had seen the video. The damage was done. The lights came back on, revealing a hall in chaos. Adanma stood motionless in the middle of the dance floor, the spotlight still on her, exposing her to hundreds of pitying and curious eyes. She slowly turned to Chidinma, who was standing with the other bridesmaids, her face pale and wet with tears. "Tell me it's not true," Adanma whispered, her voice barely audible, full of pain and disbelief. Chidinma, unable to bear the weight of her friend's heartbroken gaze, fell to her knees, her body shaking with sobs. "It was before you, Ada. I swear," she cried out, her voice desperate. "It was a long time ago. I didn't know he would end up with you." But her pleas fell on deaf ears. The pain in Adanma's eyes ran deeper than anger. "You both lied to me," she said, tears now pouring down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. "Both of you." She looked from Chidinma's sobbing face to Uche, who was walking toward her, trying to explain, his face full of regret. But she couldn't bear to look at him. With a final, broken sob, she turned and ran out of the hall, her beautiful white gown trailing behind her, her veil flying like the wings of a wounded bird. Neka, the ever-loyal friend, immediately ran after her, ignoring the chaos and the pointing fingers of the guests. She found Adanma collapsed on a bench in the hotel's quiet garden, crying uncontrollably. "Ada, breathe. Please, just breathe," Neka whispered, wrapping her arms around her friend. Adanma covered her face with both hands, her voice shaking through the sobs. "How could they do this to me? My friend. My husband. Everything was a lie." Neka's heart broke for her. She held her close, tears rolling down her own cheeks, knowing there were no words that could take away that kind of pain. Back in the ballroom, the scene was a mess. Some guests were leaving quietly, embarrassed. Others stayed, whispering, filming, and replaying the video. Uche was trying to explain himself to both families, but his words were lost in the noise and confusion. In a quiet corner of the room, Kemi stood watching the destruction she had caused. She pretended to be horrified, her hand placed dramatically on her chest, her face a picture of shock. But her eyes, cold and hard, sparkled with a dark, triumphant light. "Now," she muttered under her breath, a cruel smile touching her lips. "Now she knows exactly how betrayal feels." By the next morning, the scandal had exploded. It was the only thing anyone in Lagos was talking about. Every gossip blog and news site was covered with headlines like, "The wedding gone wrong," and "Bride betrayed at the altar." Photos and blurry video clips of the crying bride running from the hall were everywhere, shared and reshared thousands of times. Adanma's name was trending on every social media platform. Her personal tragedy turned into public entertainment. She had become a symbol of betrayal, her pain dissected and discussed by strangers across the country. She locked herself away in her parents' home, refusing to see or speak to anyone. She felt crushed by the humiliation. Amidst the social media storm, Taif was busy doing what she did best, curating content. She had recorded everything from the wedding, and she spent hours reviewing her footage, looking for the most dramatic clips to post. As she scrolled through the videos from earlier in the day, before the ceremony, she stumbled upon something strange. It was a short, insignificant clip she had filmed of the ballroom before guests arrived. In the background she saw Kemi, dressed in her golden Aso Ebi, talking to the DJ. Kemi discreetly handed him a small, black flash drive and whispered something in his ear. The DJ nodded and slipped the drive into his pocket. It was the same DJ who had later played the scandalous video. Taif's heart began to race. A cold realization washed over her. Could it be? Was it possible that Kemi, the chief bridesmaid and Adanma's closest friend, was behind it all? The idea seemed too monstrous to be true, but the evidence was right there on her screen. Her loyalty to Adanma, which was often overshadowed by her own ambition, suddenly surged to the forefront. This was not just juicy gossip. This was a cruel, calculated act of destruction against someone she cared about. She immediately deleted the scandalous post she had planned and called Nneka, her voice trembling with urgency. They met in secret that afternoon at a small, quiet cafe, far from the prying eyes of the city. Taif played the video for Nneka, whose eyes widened in disbelief and horror. Together they started to piece the truth together. They remembered Kemi's strange moodiness in the weeks leading up to the wedding, her subtle bitter comments about Uche, and her overly dramatic display of shock when the video played. It all started to make sense. It was not a random act of cruelty from an unknown enemy. It was a carefully planned act of revenge, disguised as justice, executed by the person Adanma trusted most in the world. That evening, holding the awful truth in their hands, they went to Adanma's house. They found her in her room, her eyes swollen from crying, a ghost of the radiant bride she had been just a day before. At first, she refused to see them, but they insisted, telling her it was a matter of life and death. When Adanma finally saw the footage on Taif's phone, she sat in stunned silence. She watched the short clip over and over again, her expression shifting from deep sorrow to a quiet, cold anger. The pain in her eyes was still there, but now it was mixed with a new, steely resolve. "So it was her," she said softly, her voice emotionless. "It was her all along. My own sister, my chief bridesmaid." The betrayal was now complete, a wound far deeper than Uche and Chidinma's lies. This one came from the heart of her inner circle. The next day, Adanma summoned them all. She sent a simple, direct message to Kemi, Chidinma, Taif, and Nneka, asking them to meet her at her house. The atmosphere was heavy with unspoken words as the four women gathered in Adanma's living room. Taif and Nneka sat close to Adanma, showing where their loyalty now stood. Chidinma sat alone in an armchair in a corner, her head down, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Kemi arrived last, dressed in black. Her face was pale, and her eyes were red, like she hadn't slept or stopped crying. She tried to rush to Adanma's side to offer a comforting hug, but Adanma raised a hand and stopped her without saying a word. The room fell into a heavy silence. Then finally, Adanma looked directly at Kemi, her eyes clear and steady. "Why?" she asked, her voice calm but full of pain. "Why would you do this to me, Kemi? Of all people, why you?" Kemi's carefully constructed mask of innocence crumbled. She looked at Taif's phone, which was on the table displaying the incriminating video, and knew she was caught. Her body began to shake, and she broke down in a torrent of tears and confessions. "I'm sorry," she cried, her voice choked with a mixture of guilt and anger. "I'm so sorry, Ada. But I loved him first. You knew it. You knew how much he meant to me, but you still took him from me." Adanma listened to her friend's hysterical confession without flinching. She let Kemi say all the hateful, jealous words that had been poisoning her heart for years. When she was finished, Adanma looked at her with a profound sense of pity, not anger. "You didn't lose him to me, Kemi," she said quietly, her voice filled with sadness. "You lost yourself to envy a long time ago. You let bitterness turn your heart black. You took the most beautiful day of my life and turned it into a nightmare, not for justice, but for revenge to hurt me." Kemi kept begging for forgiveness, but Adanma slowly shook her head and turned away. I forgive you, she said softly. But I will never ever forget what you did. We are no longer friends. The grand wedding was officially cancelled. In a quiet, private ceremony, Adanma's family returned the bride price to Uche's family, formally dissolving the union. Adanma ended things with Uche for good, refusing to hear any more of his excuses or apologies. Though the media continued to spread rumors and sensational stories for weeks, she refused to speak publicly about the incident. Instead, she focused on healing, surrounding herself with her family and her two true friends, Nneka and Taif. She slowly began to rebuild herself, piece by broken piece. Months later, a stronger and more resilient Adanma emerged from the ashes of her heartbreak. She started a foundation dedicated to helping women who had been victims of public humiliation and cyberbullying, using her own painful experience to empower others. Her story, once a tale of scandal, transformed into one of strength and survival. As for the other Aso Ebi Queens, Kemi disappeared from the social scene, her reputation destroyed. Chidinma, unable to face the shame, left Lagos to start a new life somewhere far away. In the glamorous world of Lagos weddings, people still whispered about that wedding, a story of how beauty can deceive, loyalty can fade, and friendship can hide the most dangerous of secrets. Thank you so much for watching. Though the story has come to an end, the conversation is just beginning. We have so many questions for you. What would you have done if you were in Adanma's shoes? Who do you think was the worst betrayer? Kemi for her calculated revenge, Chidinma for her silent lie, or Uche for his infidelity? Was Kemi's pain about loving Uche first any justification for her actions, or was it pure jealousy? And finally, what are your thoughts on Adanma forgiving Kemi, even if she could never forget? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And one last thing, where in the world are you watching from? Tell us your city and country. We want to see our amazing viewers from all over the globe. Bye for now.